is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Robin Dwyer. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Streets and subway stations underwater. Schools and businesses shut as the worst rain on record floods Hong Kong. Kyiv calls it a sham. More votes take place in local and regional Russian elections, including 4 Moscow-controlled regions of Ukraine. Members of the G20 countries gather in New Delhi with Ukraine, grain ships and climate change on the agenda. And on parade, replicas of China's famous terracotta warriors are unveiled in Hungary. Hong Kong has been flooded by the heaviest rainfall on record. Schools and businesses have shut, with the rain turning roads into rivers and disrupting transport networks. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange cancelled Friday trading after the highest rainstorm warning was issued. The extreme weather has been linked to low pressure from the remnants of Typhoon Haikui. Our correspondent An Cheng reports.
Hong Kong has been hit by a record-breaking rainfall that has brought flooding onto streets and into underground railway stations. Transport has been seriously disrupted and pedestrians have been left stranded on the streets while drivers have been stuck in their cars. According to local media, there are at least 102 injuries and 1 death. I'm currently here on a road in Chai Wan district and there's a little bit of rain right now. The street was flooded earlier and on the ground you can see residue of rocks and mud. And right behind me as well, you can see an abandoned car which probably got stuck from the rainstorm. The heavy rain began overnight. On Thursday, the observatory recorded around 6.2 inches of rain from 11 p.m. to around midnight, which is the highest hourly rainfall since 1884. The black rainstorm warning was issued, which is the highest level alert for rain, but now that's been downgraded to a yellow rainstorm level. Nevertheless, the government says that the extreme conditions warning will be extended until midnight. This is similar to conditions under a typhoon warning signal level 8, and people are advised not to travel for work unless necessary. Schools and many government services have been suspended for the day. Hong Kong Stock Exchange is also closed today, and public transport was also suspended, but that has gradually resumed service starting late morning. Nevertheless, with adverse conditions expected to still remain until later today, some railway routes and bus routes will still be diverted or suspended. The government says that there are at least 60 reports of flooding and 120 reports of landslides, and a lot of staff have been deployed to help clear drain blockages in roads. Some of them are going on right now. Meanwhile, bus services are expected to resume service by Saturday morning.
Guangdong province, which borders Hong Kong, has also been struck by severe rainstorms, forcing road closures and evacuations. Our correspondent Huang Fei reports.
Well, Guangzhou has put up the highest storm alert across several districts in the southern parts of the city. Schools are suspended today, and weather authorities say this is the strongest rainfall to hit the city this year due to the residual impacts of Typhoon Haikui and a southwestward monsoon. Meanwhile, neighboring Shenzhen also saw record amounts of rain last night, causing some overflows from the Shenzhen River, and the city's reservoir began slowly releasing water just past midnight. Residents living along the coast and low-lying areas have been evacuated overnight. In Longgang District, firefighters were seen wading through deep water, carrying vulnerable individuals to safer grounds. Shenzhen today has cancelled all classes, closed some of the metro stations, and suspended dozens of train services. Across the border, Hong Kong recorded 158 millimeters of rain in just an hour last night. That's the heaviest rainfall since records began in 1884. Social media videos show water rushing through subway stations, catching people off guard and bringing much of the city to a standstill. A black rainstorm warning was issued for the first time in 2 years, and the Hong Kong Stock Exchange also halted trading this morning. Extreme weather has hit the region again just 1 week after Super Typhoon Saola made its landfall in Guangdong. Rainstorms from Typhoon Haikui will continue to batter the western parts of the province and are expected to ease on Sunday.
Cities across southwest China are battling floods after heavy, prolonged rainfall. Our correspondent Paul Hawkins reports.
Roads became rivers as Hong Kong's 7 million people struggled through Thursday night. This man, like many, had to be rescued from the rising waters, not just on the roads, but also in the city's metro system as lines were shut or severely delayed. The city reporting just over 158 millimetres of rain, or 6 inches, in the space of an hour, the highest since records began in 1884. Hong Kong's stock exchange, schools and offices were closed on Friday. Many people were waking up to parts of the city underwater with roads destroyed and even landslides.
Before it rained, it never happened like this. There was no landslide ever. We never thought there would be any landslides here, but today it changed. This is the first time a landslide happened here. And I didn't think that something like this would happen. So it's very traumatizing.
I've never seen a scene like this before. It's the first time I've witnessed such a severe situation. Even during the previous typhoons, it was never this severe.
It was a similar story in the nearby city of Shenzhen, a tech hub of 17 million people. It recorded its heaviest rainfall since records began 70 years ago. Hundreds of flights have been suspended in the wider Guangdong province. Sewers, roads and infrastructure overwhelmed by the volume of water. The flood coming straight after 2 typhoons hit southwest China in quick succession during the past week. And it's not over yet, with heavy rain set to continue into Saturday. Paul Hawkins, CGTN.
Tropical storm Yun has brought heavy rain to Japan with warnings of flooding and mudslides. A major railway station has flooded in the capital Tokyo and some transport services have been disrupted. It has since stalled just south of Japan's main island of Honshu and is expected to weaken into a tropical depression. Hundreds of people remain stranded without food or water for a 3rd day in Greece's low-lying Thessaly region after its worst rainstorm since 1930. At least 6 people died as Storm Daniel left a trail of destruction and damages worth billions of dollars. More than 1,800 people have been rescued so far, with a major search operation still underway. More than 150 rescue workers from across Europe are continuing to try and save an American man trapped 1,000 metres underground in southern Turkey. The man fell ill while he was exploring a cave in the Taurus Mountains. Internal bleeding means he has to be pulled out on a stretcher. Members of Italy's Alpine Rescue Corps have joined attempts to get him out safely. Voting is set to finish this weekend in tightly controlled regional and local elections across Russia, as well as Moscow-controlled parts of southern and eastern Ukraine. Kyiv has described the votes in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson as sham elections with no legal standing and said they violate the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, as well as international law. The United States has called the elections illegitimate, while Moscow says Washington is meddling in its internal affairs. Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Dasha Chernyshova, who's in Moscow. So, Dasha, what more can you tell us about these elections?
Well, the elections are ongoing. We understand, of course, in the so-called new territories of Russia, the biggest concern is security. And according to the head of Russia's Central Election Committee, Ella Pamfilova, an election commission has been evacuated in the Kherson region because of a missile attack. We also have heard the officials at the election commission addressing the criticism from the West that these elections, according to some Western reports, are taking place at the gunshot and at the gunpoint. And the Russian authorities have all said that there is the heavy presence of the law enforcement agencies in those territories as those elections are ongoing. But again, this is the guns that are being used to protect people who are coming to the polling stations, because these, of course, elections are taking place in a very difficult security situation. Addressing the criticism from the West of the holding of these elections in these new territories, the Russian mission to the United States has said very clearly that the U.S. is meddling into the Russian affairs, and the U.S. US, according to Moscow, has the long tradition of meddling into the affairs of other countries, and they simply do not have right to do so. We also have heard about the elections taking place in other regions of Russia. In Moscow, the authorities have said there have been several attempts to interfere, but those attempts at the interference, for instance, when the SMS messages have been sent, have all been thwarted. So we understand that no major irregularities have been reported, for instance, in Moscow, but certainly these elections are being closely monitored.
And Dasha, Moscow is going to build an air corridor zone for testing drones. What can you tell us about that?
Well, indeed, according to Vedomosti Business Daily, the sources are saying that Moscow is indeed planning to create this special corridor where they will be testing drones. The corridor will stretch for 87 kilometers, and we understand that that may start operational in 2024. And it will be located in the east of Moscow, in the Rudnevo Industrial Park, and will stretch to the Volosovo airfield, which is near Moscow in the south. So certainly the understanding is that there is the need to test those drones, as the Russian president has most recently been saying that Russia may not have enough specialists on drone control, saying that Russia has already taken the decision to prepare up to 1 million such specialists by 2030. But then again, the understanding is that this sphere is developing very, very fast, and more specialists are needed. So as we understand from the sources that have been quoted by the Vedomosti Daily, the operations of this corridor might start soon. But again, the question is how important these drones have become in all spheres, including in the defense industry.
Dasha, thank you very much. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and climate change top the agenda as the G20 starts to gather in New Delhi.
We're going on a journey round some of the most spectacular parts of Europe to witness how two ancient cultures are collaborating to create a new, clean, green energy system. And hear how working together on green energy could help build trust between China and Europe.
If we keep our relationships strong, if we have strong exchanges, China's role will be key and very important for European Union energy transition.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. The worst rain on record floods Hong Kong, with streets and subway stations underwater and schools and businesses forced to close. Kyiv calls it a sham. More votes take place in local and regional Russian elections, including 4 Moscow-controlled regions of Ukraine. A summit of the G20, a group of the world's biggest economies, gets underway in New Delhi this weekend, with the conflict in Ukraine expected to dominate talks. Leaders are arriving for the 2-day gathering, which is expected to focus on global food security and finding alternative routes for Ukrainian grain. The meeting, which includes the African Union and nations from the global south, will also discuss climate change and the problems of debt distress. Our correspondent Dong Shui is in New Delhi. Shui, China's President Xi and Russia's Vladimir Putin will not be attending these talks, where Ukraine is going to top the agenda. What can we expect from the discussions?
Well, Robin, in less than 1 hour, Chinese Premier Li Qiang will be touching down in New Delhi, where the world's most important leaders are gathering. Well, I am at the hotel where Premier Li and Chinese delegations are staying for the G20 summit. They're all fresh from the ASEAN summit in Indonesia. Well, this is the first time Li is attending a global conference like the G20 as China's premier. Well, yesterday, the charge d'affaires at China's embassy in New Delhi, Ma Jia, the highest level Chinese diplomat, diplomat in India so far, told me in a sit-down interview that Beijing hopes the summit can consolidate consensus, convey confidence, and promote development, adding that China has always attached great importance to G20 and its related activities and actively participates in them. Well, Ma says Premier Li will elaborate on China's views on G20 cooperation at the summit and is willing to make active contributions to promote a stable global economic recovery and sustainable development, also emphasizing that China stands ready to work with India to further improve and advance bilateral relations. And having speaking all that, New Delhi appears to be in full swing for the G20 summit right now. We arrived at the Indian capital 2 days ago. The streets are lined up with the banners. Some have the summit theme on them: one Earth, one family, and one future, while others urge to give a voice to the global South. Also lifestyle for environment, digital public infrastructure, energy security, and multilateral reforms are among the issues topping the agenda this year, and as well as you mentioned the entry of the African Union into the G20 group is also expected to be discussed in New Delhi, and it's believed admission to the 55-member body could help its international standing as a voice for developing countries. Robin?
So lots to talk about then. Given the divisions, though, over issues like climate change, how hopeful are members of reaching agreement?
Well, that we don't know, but the thing is, that at the Indian Sherpas gave a press conference to the media earlier in the day, where it says that they are working on the New Delhi Declaration that will include the climate change and economic development, as well as multilateral reformation among all these countries. But the thing is, they're still waiting for the leaders from the 20 countries to sign the agreement on the declaration. So for whether there will be agreement reached in terms of climate change, we just have to wait and see.
Dong Shui in New Delhi, thank you very much. As a G20 member, Saudi Arabia will be taking part in the talks in New Delhi. This comes after the kingdom was invited to join the BRICS economic grouping during its August summit in South Africa. Our correspondent Yasser Hakim reports.
The BRICS group has attracted international attention, consisting 80% of global population and almost 33% share of global GDP. It has surpassed the G7 advanced economies. The expected Saudi membership at BRICS has been welcomed by experts here as a positive development for the rich oil exporter.
I think this is going to be a phenomenon group of economies when we have almost 50% of the largest oil consumers in one group, and we have also the largest oil producers in one group as well.
But it's not only about oil. Joining BRICS conforms with the kingdom's Vision 2030 to diversify its economy and sources of revenue.
I think being in a group with China, which is the #1 trade partner of Saudi Arabia, and also India, the second trade partner, I think this will help the country actually to achieve somehow this goal.
The Middle Eastern nation is planning to capitalize on its various potentials to benefit the BRICS members.
The kingdom has the capabilities for a promising economy in size, population, geographical location that links 3 continents, different water routes that facilitate trade, as well as natural resources for energy, minerals, and renewable energy projects to achieve sustainable development.
The kingdom has established a public investment fund with global assets worth over $590 billion in 2022. It is building a massive tourism and entertainment industry, investing in sports locally and around the world, as well as opening the door for an influx of foreign investments.
Besides its new involvement with the BRICS, Saudi Arabia is also a member of the G20 group and is adamant on putting more extensive effort on both fronts.
Experts believe Saudi Arabia has a busy agenda going into the G20 meetings.
We hosted G20 in 2022. We are seeking to be one of the top G20 members, and I think we are putting a lot of influence in G20. We have invested a lot of money in renewable energy in Saudi Arabia and innovation of renewable energy outside of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is seeking also to increase this trade partnership with the G20 as well.
Engaging more extensively with various international groups is the main strategy for the Saudi leadership, as it tries to cement itself as a major regional and international player. Yes Hakim for CGTN, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
The DPRK has unveiled what it calls its first tactical nuclear-armed submarine. It will join a fleet that patrols the waters between the Korean Peninsula and Japan. State television has shown leader Kim Jong-un flanked by a number of officials attending the launch ceremony. He says it will be one of the main underwater offensive means of the naval force and is part of a push to build nuclear-powered submarines. The launch has been condemned by South Korea and Japan. Thousands of people have taken part in anti-government protests in the Syrian city of Sweda. Demonstrators are calling for the resignation of President Bashar al-Assad after fuel subsidies ended last month. Anger at the rising cost of living has brought discontent to government-held areas. The United Nations says that the majority of Syria's population is now living in poverty after more than a decade of civil war. Ancient treasures from China have gone on display in southern Hungary. The exhibition includes hundreds of original artifacts, including a jade burial suit of armour and replicas of the legendary terracotta warriors. Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports.
It's an extraordinary journey back to the age of clay soldiers and jade emperors, a chance for visitors to come face to face with the immortal guards of China's first emperor.
The goal of this exhibition is to bring Chinese culture close to the Hungarian public because there is little awareness about China's history and culture in this region of Hungary.
The legendary terracotta warriors, sometimes referred to as the eighth wonder of the ancient world, can only be viewed in China, standing in the original pits in Xi'an, where they were first discovered. But 50 quality replicas are on show at this exhibition, made from the same clay as the originals.
It was essential for us to display authentic copies. The warriors you see here were made by a Czech company working with local Chinese artisans. They created unbelievably accurate and realistic copies of the original warrior army.
The exhibition illustrates the remarkable achievements of the Han Dynasty in politics, economy, culture, and the arts. Those achievements enriched ancient China, according to the exhibit's curator, and neighboring countries after the creation of the Silk Road.
This ancient world helped shape our present world. The Belt and Road Initiative exemplifies this.
China and Hungary may be thousands of miles apart, but their cultural and economic exchange brings them closer together.
This exhibit highlights the importance of the ancient bridge between East and West, established during the Han Dynasty. The Silk Road provided for the exchange of ideas, commerce, culture between China and the rest of the world. These bonds are still as important as ever. 2023 marks the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative, in which Hungary was the first country to join.
Now visitors here can marvel at each piece on display.
It's extraordinary that this exhibit is in Hungary. Having a chance to see the jade armor in person was special. There are only 3 in the entire world.
For many, this rare opportunity to come close to the wonders of ancient China will live long in the memory. Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN, Szeged, Hungary.
It's International Literacy Day, a global celebration of the importance of reading and writing. People are being encouraged to take some time out to get stuck into a good book. Around 750 million young people and adults worldwide lack basic literacy skills, with rates worsening during the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, better access to books is seen as key to improving literacy, and some communities are finding novel ways of helping people reconnect with the joy of reading. The number of libraries in Britain has declined in recent years, but several thousand groups have created their own micro-libraries based inside the iconic but often disused red telephone boxes. Our correspondent Michael Voss reports.
Fairwarp is a village in the Sussex countryside about an hour's drive south of London. The nearest library is several kilometres away. So a few years ago, the village took over the rarely used old red phone box and filled it with donated books.
It's nice to have our own little library because a lot of people can't get around in this village and we don't have a bus service and that sort of thing, so we like to keep it local. So what we'll do is we'll bring in some of our own books and people just swap them out, take as they please, bring some back.
These red phone boxes are one of the iconic images of Britain. In central London, tourists line up to have their photo taken beside one. They're owned and operated by British Telecom.
Perfect angle.
But with most people now using mobile phones, payphones are becoming increasingly redundant. Rather than scrap them altogether, BT created an Adopt a Phone Box scheme where local councils or charities can take one over for £1, little more than $1. Today, there are more than 7,000 of these former phone boxes offering a range of facilities, including mini museums and art galleries. This one's decorated to mark special events like the coronation of King Charles or the recent Women's Football World Cup, while inside is a collection point for food parcels. But the majority are micro-libraries like the one in Fairwarp.
It's wonderful to keep the phone box because they are an iconic feature and we wouldn't want it to disappear, so it's wonderful to have a good use for it.
The nearby village of Nutley also has one.
Well, this is our village library, an iconic K6 red telephone box.
Martin Craddock is chair of the local parish council. It may only cost $1 or so to adopt one, but the community must still pay to restore it.
No, it wasn't that simple. It had to be refurbished. We had to find a specialist refurbishment company. They have to take them away. They weigh, this is a model K6. It weighs about 3/4 of a ton. So it's taken away. They take the glass out, they shot blast it, they paint it, and then it comes back and we fitted shelves for the books.
Do people use it?
Yes, it's much appreciated in the community. It really is.
Next year marks the centenary of these iconic red phone boxes, and to mark the occasion, British Telecom has just released another 1,000 of them for similar community schemes. Michael Voss, CGTN, Sussex.
Now excitement is building in Paris as the Rugby World Cup gets underway later. The opening match is one of the most hotly anticipated clashes of the tournament as hosts France play New Zealand in front of a sellout crowd. France has never won the trophy before, while New Zealand is 3-time winners and are looking to move ahead of defending champions South Africa as the most successful side ever. The tournament runs until the 28th of October. Our headlines again. Streets and subway stations underwater, schools and businesses shut as the worst rain on record floods Hong Kong. Kyiv calls it a sham. More votes take place in local and regional Russian elections, including 4 Moscow-controlled regions of Ukraine. And members of the G20 countries gather in New Delhi ahead of Saturday's summit, with Ukraine, grain ships and climate change on the agenda. And that is The World Today. Thanks for watching. There's more news on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.